All right, welcome to another live episode of geekoutdoors.com. This week we have some pretty big news with the whole new T-Mobile and Sprint merger proposal announcement. And after that, we're going to be talking about Linux, or specifically Linux app showing up on Chrome OS. And finally, we'll have a little bit of Q&A. So good morning, Lance. Thank you so much for joining. And so let's go ahead and get right into this, because this is something that I think a lot of people have been expecting. Maybe not specifically with Sprint, that was kind of surprising, but the whole thing about these mergers happening, because a while back, years ago, AT&T was also in merger talks with T-Mobile. And obviously that never really panned out. And so if you haven't seen this specific video, there is an announcement video by the CEO of Sprint, Marcelo Clary, and of course, the CEO of T-Mobile, John Lagery. And these two, they've been bitter rivals for a long time now, with Sprint usually being at the bottom. And T-Mobile for a while was also there as well. But it wasn't until John Lagery came along as CEO that the company really changed and shook up the entire wireless industry. And so this whole announcement, they're pretty much focused on like two main things. First and foremost, it's going to be about being good for the entire telecom market, how them merging is a good thing, i.e. creating more jobs in the United States. Okay, they really heavily focus on that, and I'll get into that just a little bit later. And then the second big thing is 5G. Okay, so 5G is something that is going to be the next level of wireless, at least here in the United States and in North America, because in other parts of the world, like South Korea or China or Japan, you know, their actual internet speeds are faster than what we get here in the United States and North America. I'm not sure how fast they are in parts of Europe, because I'm not really familiar with those areas. But I really think that the US, being a very developed economy, it's normally lagging behind other countries that have faster internet speeds. Okay, and so this announcement was something that I think a lot of people enjoyed. I myself enjoyed, because I really do like John Lagery as a CEO. He is one of a kind when it comes to the personality. And then Marcelo Clary, if you didn't know, he is actually already a billionaire. He actually had a telecom company before becoming CEO. The company was Brightstar. Okay, so he is actually going to be taking over a different role. And this is not so much a merger per se, as it's more of they're forming a brand new company. Okay, and so the brand new company that they're forming is going to be worth about $146 billion. And I will be talking about this amount, or their net worth, later on when we compare it to Verizon, AT&T, and then other reasons why this is important. And so the whole new company right now, it will retain the same name, which is T-Mobile. And then John Lagery will actually be the CEO. However, Marcelo will actually be the chief operating officer. So he's primarily going to be taking care of all the behind the scenes, the finance and stuff, which is really important, because as I stated a little bit earlier, the beginning of this video, the two CEOs really focus on the point that it's going to create a lot of jobs. Okay, so that's the big thing that they focus on, and that's not by accident, because whenever these mergers occur, this is not going to be like a simple thing. Okay, there's going to be a lot of politics involved. Okay, there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And this happens with any merger, you know, specifically here in countries like the United States, where there's a lot of anti-competition laws. The same thing happened with the Bell companies, if any of you are old enough to remember, where the big AT&T Bell companies were broken up. And that's why we have companies like Verizon today. You know, that's why we have T-Mobile, Sprint, and AT&T by itself, because of anti-competition. Okay, and so it's going to be going through a lot of things. And so what T-Mobile and Sprint have to do before this entire merger goes through is they have to convince the people who regulate the telecom industry in the United States that this is going to be a good thing, and that this will not form a sort of monopoly. Okay, that it will not be anti-competitive. And this is really much bigger than just the United States, because if you didn't know, telecom or actually, I'm sorry, T-Mobile is actually owned by Deutsche Telekom, and Deutsche Telekom is a company out of Germany. Okay, so they're actually out of Bonn, Germany. So the company Deutsche Telekom is the largest telecom company, if I'm not mistaken. I think Vodafone might be pretty big as well, but Deutsche Telekom is definitely one of the largest. They are the majority stockholder of T-Mobile, if not the outright owner, because if you see here, look at their logo. That's not a T-Mobile logo, that's a Deutsche Telekom logo. And then Sprint, the majority stockholder is SoftBank, and they are out of Japan. And SoftBank is also one of the largest telecom companies. I think they're the largest in Japan for sure. And so, as you can see, a lot of these companies, especially here in the United States, where people think it is a local a company, most of these companies are not. Most of these companies are multinational conglomerates. And as a matter of fact, Verizon, which is now solely a United States company, it was a United States company before, but the majority stockholder before was actually Vodafone, which is actually out of the UK, in London, as a matter of fact. And so this is a lot of things going on. This is extremely complex. And here is the SoftBank's current CEO, Masayoshi Son. And so he is not going to be involved with the proposed merger. However, that's why this person, the Sprint CEO, this is why Marcelo is going to Clary, if I'm pronouncing that right, that's why Marcelo Clary, he's going to be the one, I think, really managing this part, okay? Because this is going to be extremely complex. There's going to be a lot of politics involved. There's going to be a whole ton of money, and this will definitely affect people way outside of just the telecom industry, because obviously not only do they have to get the approval, but then also the infrastructure itself, because this whole idea of Verizon, AT&T, and all these big companies, they share a lot of the same networks. As a matter of fact, a lot of people lease out space from the bigger companies like Verizon, AT&T. And so even though T-Mobile and Sprint are different companies, they might actually be running on Verizon's or AT&T's networks underneath. Okay, and so it's pretty complex. And so I think this will be a good thing. And let me tell you why I think it's a good thing. It's a good thing because I think it will offer a much bigger competition. Because even though T-Mobile has made amazing strides over the years, and Sprint, has pretty much survived, like basically the brink of bankruptcy at some point, it seemed like, they coming together will be a much more formidable competition versus Verizon and AT&T, which obviously are much larger. And this will be something that I think will actually change the entire landscape of telecom here in the United States, because until T-Mobile started really changing things, really started taking risks under primarily, I would say, John Lagry, they were still seen as kind of like Sprint, like the leftover telecom. Let's just say that when you don't have a choice, you want something cheaper, but you don't want the best service, then you're probably going to choose T-Mobile or Sprint. Okay, that's how they were before. But whenever John Lagry took a lot of risks, did a lot of crazy things, as a matter of fact, it actually forced Verizon and AT&T to change as well. And so I'm on this page, Vodafone, because I wanted to show you something. Now I'm going to talk about Verizon, AT&T, how Vodafone before was the primary owner of Verizon, okay? But back in 2013, Verizon did a buyout. They bought back the 45% stake in Verizon, and now they own 100% of the company. And Verizon was actually an American company before, and they still are. They were part of the Bell GE company. If I remember, was it GE or GT? I can't remember. But anyway, that's the company they were before. And then Vodafone actually came in and bought a large amount of stocks within that company. And so I'm here because I'm going to show you the size of these companies, okay? And so that's why I said this part right here is important, okay? Because money matters, especially when it comes to these large companies, okay? And so, hey, Carlos, thank you for joining. Lance says, Ting uses T-Mobile and Sprint systems. Yes, a lot of these companies, they all use the networks from these bigger companies. And so Verizon, their current market cap right now is $196.22 billion. And then if you look at AT&T, it's $198.13 billion. And so before this merger, each one of these companies, T-Mobile and Sprint, they were valued at less than $100 billion, even though they have so many customers. But this will actually give them more power to go up against these larger, much larger companies. Okay, and so that is something that I think they really had no choice to do. Okay, of course, they could still go through the years kind of scraping by, trying to get every little customer that they can. And I think T-Mobile did the best at that. But at some point, these other much larger companies, they're going to have an advantage. Okay, and the thing is, both Verizon and AT&T, it's not like they didn't stop trying to improve things, okay, or didn't stop competing. Let's just say that. But this is where I get into my other thoughts about this merger and why it's not just important to go up against Verizon and AT&T, okay? It's more important because they could actually be defeated or dominated by the tech companies, not the telecom companies. And this is why I showed you this market caps, because this is important. So AT&T and Verizon, they're the largest, okay? Let's just say they're both worth $200 billion, okay? Let's just say that. Now, as large as that sounds, and you got to also remember Comcast and Charter, they're in this as well, and they're large as well. So let's go ahead and look at that really quick. Let's just say Comcast, I know is really large. Okay, so Comcast, let's see their market cap. Their market cap is $148 billion. And then let's go ahead and look at Charter. Let's look at Charter Communications. Okay, so Charter Communications, they're at $64 billion, so they're pretty large as well. But let's compare that to the big tech companies. Google, $729 billion. Amazon, $764 billion. Apple, a whopping $931 billion. Facebook, $518 billion. Okay, so why is that important? It's important because these telecom companies could easily be swallowed up by these companies. And if you haven't already noticed, these big tech companies are already invading the telecom space. If you look at Google Fiber, which is available in certain cities, let's look at their plans. Okay, let's say the cheapest plan. For $50, you get up to 100 megs upload and 100 meg downloads, and you have no data caps. That's absolutely insane. Let's go ahead and compare that to a service like AT&T. Okay, so let's remember, Google Fiber, $50, you get all this, right? And AT&T, for $40, you get internet speeds up to 50 megs. And the upload speeds is probably going to be slower. And once again, it's up to 50 megs, right? And then you have a 1 terabyte data cap per month. And so if you go over that, it's $10 for each additional 50 gigs, up to $100 a month. They could charge you extra. And then, obviously, if you bundle with other service, you get a little discount. And so even just looking at the home internet service, I think that looks like a better deal. And you're getting way, way faster internet speeds, okay? And then let's look at cell phone service, all right? So I like T-Mobile's plan because it's quote-unquote the simplest. So let's just say for one person, you get unlimited everything. That's $70 a month. That's not a bad price, okay? Which is in line with the most competitors, except for Verizon and AT&T. They charge more, of course. But then if you look at Project Fi, another Google project, if you look at their actual pricing, so you pay about $60, and then you never pay more than $60, and they charge you $10 per gig. Okay, and so I've had people who actually have the Project Fi service, and I'd say at this point, it's not the best. Okay, it's okay. But what I'm trying to show you here is these tech companies, and right now I'm primarily focused on Google because they're the only ones who's out there right now. But I can guarantee you that Amazon, Apple, Facebook, they are looking, and I'm positive they're going to get into this space as well. And if you think about it right now, they already are in this space because they are already providing a lot of content online. They're using up a lot of the bandwidth that these providers have underneath their backbone. And so this is something that is going to be scary for all these telecom companies. Okay, so I have mentioned this in the previous episodes. That's why this whole net neutrality thing happened. Did you ever wonder why it was all these telecom companies that were against having net neutrality, right? They were doing all of that. It wasn't because they were scared of crushing small businesses. They were scared of getting crushed by these bigger businesses that are in their space that could swallow them up, that could absolutely destroy their business. Okay, and so that's really the main reason, because once companies like Google get in, and obviously Google is everywhere now, but once companies like them get in into these areas as well, and they are providing a much, much better service for much cheaper, then it's going to be hard for people to argue that, okay, well, maybe I should pay more for less, like right here. Okay, and so that's really what they're scared of. That's my own personal opinion, but I'm just thinking about logically, why would you ever pay more to get less? Okay, and so that's why I think this merger that is occurring, it will not only help competition against Verizon and AT&T, but it'll also help them against these much bigger tech companies who are not stopping. They are not stopping. They're going to get into this space. They're going to, more than likely, they're going to dominate this space. And as large as Verizon and AT&T are, if you just look at their market caps, they're absolutely no match for these other companies who are 2-3 times, and in this case, almost 5 times larger. And so those are my thoughts on that. And I think, like, once again, I do think it is a good thing. But at the same time, let's not forget who is really competing, who's really coming into this space. It's not these telecom companies. It's these technology companies. Okay, so with that being said, speaking of Google, it seems like we talk about Google every single week. Looks like Linux apps are finally going to be showing up really soon. And so I did talk about this on a previous episode where I talked about Crostini, okay, and that was basically for Chrome OS. It was going to allow a Linux VM or virtual machine to run in Chrome OS. And the reason why that's important is because you're going to be able to run Linux apps within Chrome OS. And so if you go to this site about Chromebooks, they discovered something. It's in the dev channel that there looks like there might be Linux apps available. There it is, Linux beta. That is really cool. Okay, and so as you can see there, they're digging down further, and they actually even did install a terminal app as well. That's so funny. And so this looks like that's something that might be showing up possibly on the upcoming Google I/O, which is May 8th through 10th. And so a lot of people are speculating that Chrome OS will announce this Linux app support. And this is a huge thing, okay? Because, we kind of have been talking about this already. We talk about Microsoft at first, right? That they are really coming into the Linux space. And so are many other companies. And if you didn't know, Google and Facebook, Amazon, they are humongous users of Linux. They really are. They use a lot of Linux stuff. Okay, and so this is not by, this isn't by accident, is what I'm saying. It's not by accident that big companies like Microsoft and Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple, I'm pretty sure they have Linux servers, that they are in this Linux space. And they're not using it just because it's Linux. They're using it because Linux makes money. That's the primary reason that they're using it. And Linux, especially the Linux kernel, is on billions of devices. And so by having this Linux app support built into Chrome OS, much like what Windows is doing by offering, if you remember, they offered Ubuntu, the terminal in there within Windows, and also their new Azure IoT service, which is basically a Linux distro itself. It runs on Linux, a modified version of the Linux kernel. And so it's no mistake that all of these companies are investing heavily in Linux because there's so much money here. Okay, so let me give you some of my thoughts on the practical uses of having Linux apps run in Chrome OS. And these are my opinions. Hey, good morning, George Treppas. Thank you so much for joining. Haven't seen you in a while. Appreciate you joining. And so this is my own personal opinion, okay? So Google already knew that the browser was going to be the primary application that people use. years ago. That's why we have Chrome OS. And look at where we are at now. A lot more people use their browser to do everything now than they ever have before, because a lot of people use web apps. A lot of people use SaaS services, software as a service. Most people do not buy software to install on their computers anymore. And even if you do download and install it on your computer, you still need to connect with an online service to verify that this works and also to get updates. Okay? And so, as you can see here, the web browser is extremely important. And I have talked about this in previous episodes where in the future, your operating system will not matter underneath, because everybody's going to be using some type of browser-based system anyway. Okay, and so so by having this whole Linux app available within Chrome OS, a way for you to run Linux apps. So let's go ahead and clarify what that is. So you're not really running Linux inside Chrome OS. What you are doing is through some type of virtualization, something like that, where it will actually allow you to run programs that were built for Linux within Chrome OS. And that's powerful. It's powerful because Chrome OS, and I've made fun of Chrome OS before so many times. I really feel if you use a desktop operating system, my personal opinion, I do not see Chrome OS as a viable desktop operating system, because all it is a browser. Okay? But over the years, Google has really made Chrome OS a viable place for you to do everything. Okay, they've added more services. They've added their Chrome app compatibility, right? And then they're going to add more Android app support in the future. And then now with Linux apps. And so basically it's a one-stop shop. And as I just mentioned earlier, operating systems will not matter in the future. And if you can do everything through one system like this, where like Google takes care of everything, I think that's one of the big appeals of Chrome OS. Is you really don't have to go anywhere else. Okay, if you are able to run natively Linux apps through Chrome OS, through whatever they use underneath to make it really seamless and then doesn't take a performance hit, then it's going to move a lot of people over to Chrome OS. Just think about that. We are already doing things through our browser anyway. And so for people who use a lot of Linux stuff, not even just normal desktop users, okay? I don't think the everyday user like us who use Linux distros, I don't think this will be appealing to us. But imagine if you were somebody who does development, or somebody who is a system admin, right? And then you are working for a company that is a Chrome OS shop, okay? And this doesn't seem weird, because if you ever worked at large corporate companies, they always try to reduce their costs, okay? And so if you have something like Chrome OS, then you could reduce the cost of system administration and maintenance, okay? Because if you've ever worked at a big corporation, updating systems costs a lot of money and time. There's downtime involved, and then especially if you have production services that has an SLA, which is a service level of availability, which is the uptime, then you can't have any downtime. And so if you have something like Chrome OS, where a lot of this stuff is being handled on the back end, then it makes those things a lot easier. And if you do have these type of virtual services, or ways to actually run apps from different operating systems on your computer, which all companies have been doing for a long time now, but if Chrome OS is able to have something that's built in, then it would give them a lot more flexibility. So now Chrome OS is not just for your grandma or grandpa who doesn't really know how to use a computer. Okay, it can actually be used as a computer to get quote unquote work done, right? And so that was my big argument with Chrome OS, is that I would not see myself ever using this because I can't really do anything on it, and that's my personal opinion, right? But as they're adding more and more of these things, I really feel that they're making Chrome OS more viable. And then as I mentioned, I think last week, whenever they combine Chrome OS with Android with the new Fuchsia OS, it'll be even more powerful. Okay, and so that's why I think this one is so powerful. Okay, and I'll be interested to see what Google announces with this in Google I/O. I really think that, especially after seeing this right here, that I really think that they will announce something pretty big at Google I/O concerning Chrome OS. My guess is, okay, they might show this feature, but hopefully they'll talk more about Fuchsia OS and how this is important to their long-term strategy. Hey George, hey, thanks. Yeah, long time no see. I haven't seen you in a while. And so yeah, so that's why I think by Google doing this and pushing this further, it will not only allow them to have more, I would say, more flexibility and more usability with Chrome OS, but it will also keep them ahead of the game because Microsoft is not going to stop with their whole entrance into the whole Linux field. You know, and once again, I'd say at the beginning, Linux, the reason they're using this, it's about money. Okay, it's not really about the technical stuff, because these companies, they could build this on their own. They have the resources. It's about the money. Okay, Linux makes companies a lot of money, a ton of money. Okay, and so that's why they want to get in on this. And so that's why when Microsoft released their Azure Linux services, a lot of people in the Linux community were angry, but honestly, they don't care about that. What they care about is it makes them money. That's the main thing. Okay, it's never, in my opinion, it's not really ever about the community. And so for people in the Linux community who might be angry at this, there's not much you can do. Because, and I have mentioned this before, if you look at the Linux Foundation, the majority of the people contributing money to the Linux Foundation so that they could actually do open source projects is mostly not open source companies. They're large, big companies like AT&T, like Microsoft, like Google, you know. And so, yeah, so kind of all of this is so weird. Like whenever you see things like this, right? You know, and then I talk about this various things, how, you know, they're competing against each other. But then if you really look at it from like a high level, they're all working with each other. You know, I mean, it's that's the thing. They're like frenemies. Let's just say that they're friends and they're enemies. And so it's so funny. And so even though you think that one company will dominate and monopolize everything, the reality is they all work together. I mean, even if you think about companies like Apple, right? You think they don't work with anybody? Well, look at all the services that run on Apple. I'm pretty sure they're not just Apple services. A lot of people use their internet browser on Apple, and obviously they're using way other web apps besides just Apple products. And so anyway, it's kind of interesting. And I myself, I do hope that by companies doing this, right? Once again, I do hope that it does spread the message that Linux as a desktop operating system or Linux services is also very valuable. And so that's always my whole thought on that. I don't see Linux desktop, and I've said this before, since Linux makes these companies, and not just companies, but governments, they make them so much money. It's a part of our everyday life, whether you realize it or not. Then Linux is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. For anybody who's a hardcore Linux user who's thinking that Microsoft coming in, Google coming in, all these other companies doing stuff, it's going to destroy Linux. No, it's not going to destroy Linux because they rely on Linux to make them money. Okay, so as long as there's money involved, and as long as there's billions upon billions of devices running on the Linux kernel, yeah, it's not going anywhere. If anything, it's just going to evolve over time. And whenever companies do things like this, I tend to look at the positive side, that it will actually spread the message that, hey, Linux is cool. You know, this is something you can use. You could actually do work or get your entertainment or do anything else that you need through Linux. And so if they come in here and they like it, maybe they might be interested in, hey, there's also the Linux desktop as well. Or maybe they might be interested into something more technical, you know, like development or server-side stuff. So that's my whole thoughts on that. And it's interesting. It'd be interesting to see what Google offers up at Google I/O. I do really hope that they do talk about this. And so that is it for this particular episode. I talked about the T-Mobile Sprint merger, and it's not 100% yet, but for the simple fact that they did this whole promo video, I'm pretty sure their lawyers and everybody else who's involved in this is pretty confident that this is going to go through. And then also Linux apps, looks like it's a reality. It will be running in Chrome OS. So it's going to be pretty interesting. Let's just say that. And so now I have a lot more time than usual. And so I do have time left for our end of Q&A geek discussion, where we just talk about whatever. And this week, I really wanted to talk about Cobra Kai. I did do a review on this earlier this week. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's awesome. And so here is Cobra Kai. I'm gonna turn this off real quick. And this is a series that or Karate Kid. I really loved Karate Kid. It was such an awesome movie. I really stopped watching it after, I would say, I did watch it up to Karate Kid 3, and then I saw a little bit of the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank, and I did not enjoy Karate Kid after that. I didn't even watch the remake that they had later on in 2010 with Jackie Chan and with Will Smith's son, Jaden Smith. And so I'm trying not to leave any spoilers, but probably most people have seen it anyway. And so William Zabka comes back as Johnny Lawrence, and this is basically kind of like the new. At first, I thought it was Daniel-san, but he's really not the new Daniel-san. He is really going to become the new Johnny Lawrence. That's my personal opinion. And so his name is Miguel. And so one of the things that I really enjoyed about this show is the fact that it really sticks to who Johnny Lawrence is. You know, he's a jerk, you know, but he's a cool jerk. And they never really stray away from that. I mean, if you actually watch this show, I was really surprised by how Google, or the people who created this, wasn't Google, but the company that created this didn't really care about political correctness. And so Johnny from the 80s, he's the Johnny of today. Just a little bit older, a little bit angrier, but he's still the same guy. And I absolutely love that. And then whenever you see Ralph Macchio, who was Daniel LaRusso, Daniel-san, he's also grown as well. And man, I mean, you know, these guys are over 50 years old. And so that's pretty amazing how they still look, especially Daniel LaRusso or Ralph Macchio. He looks really young in this show. But it's kind of funny how he kind of got the role reversal. Yeah, Lance, that's right. Yeah, yeah, Johnny Lawrence, the guy. That's so funny. Whenever I saw the trailer where Ralph Macchio or Daniel was making fun of Johnny Lawrence because he kicked him in the face, that was so funny. It's kind of sad that he had to go through that. And so if you don't remember, or maybe if you're too young to remember Karate Kid, this was actually the final scene of Karate Kid, where it was Johnny Lawrence versus Daniel, and the momentous part was obviously the crane kick, okay, where John Kreese was telling Johnny, like, look, you just basically hurt him to where he can't come back, okay. And so that's why when we came to that last scene where he just got kicked in the face right here, it was, oh yeah, well, no, he actually crushed his knee. Well, man, I can't get that scene right there. Let me go back there. There it is, the infamous crane kick. That was so awesome. And ever since then, this particular series has been a very iconic series. It's one that I think a lot of kids, especially myself, it really got you not only interested in the whole realm of martial arts, right? But it also like had a lot of really good lessons, you know, specifically through Daniel LaRusso and Mr. Miyagi, played by Pat Morita. It really focuses on the relationship between them and how you could basically grow as a person even if you are going through hardships. But what I really enjoyed about Karate Kid 1 was, honestly, I really enjoyed Johnny Lawrence. He was my favorite character. Funny enough, he's my favorite character in that he was so memorable. And then as you actually watch the entire movie, at the end, you find out that Johnny Lawrence, he's really not the bad guy. You know, he was just a guy who, you know, went through some issues, okay? And the thing is, after Karate Kid 1 and Karate Kid 2, John Kreese nearly kills, or not kills, but he nearly beats the crap out of Johnny Lawrence, or he did. And then you find out who the real villain is, which is John Kreese this whole time. But, you know, you never really came back to that again, okay? I myself, I thoroughly enjoyed Karate Kid 2. To me, that was awesome. Okay, I still think Karate Kid 1 is better, but Karate Kid 2 for me was awesome, especially the music by Peter, I think, Cetera. That was an awesome song. And I enjoyed Karate Kid 2 as well. But it never had the same feel that it did as Karate Kid 1. And I think a big part of that was because of Johnny Lawrence, played by William Zabka. And so Carlos is saying, Cobra Kai have subtitles in Portuguese. I need to watch. That's awesome, Carlos. Oh, so Cobra Kai is available in Brazil? Because I know YouTube Red, it's not available in every country. And I know you could change some settings. You know, you could probably spoof the IP if you wanted to. So you could actually have access to the service. I think a lot of people do that for Netflix as well. And so Lance saying Miyagi-san was awesome. Yeah, he was. And I will say this, if you have not seen the series, it's 10 episodes, by the way. There is some really sweet moments within this. It plays very respectfully a lot of homages to Karate Kid 1. Okay, so I highly recommend you go check it out. This was an awesome movie. So Black Eye Worm, hi there. Hey, good morning, Black Eye Worm. Thanks for joining. And since we're on the topic of movies, if you wanted to talk about anything else, feel free to do that. I just really like just talking about anything. And it's normal for us, if you are brand new to this live episode, welcome, first and foremost. But secondly, normally what we do on our live episodes on Saturday is we normally first and foremost talk about what's going on in the geek and tech world. And then secondly, we'll normally talk about Linux stuff. And then the final part of it, we just talk about whatever. Okay, so it's just whatever geeky discussions that you want. Obviously, if it's something that I want to talk about as well. And so if there's something, other topic that you think is interesting, put it in there in the discussion below. Oh, good morning, Samuel. Thank you for joining. And so let me talk about something else that I think was pretty good. Was Avengers Infinity War, which, let me see. I think it's already passed $1 billion. Let me see. I think it's already passed $1 billion. So, and so this movie, let me just say that first and foremost, the Avengers Infinity War, it was an excellent movie. Let's just say an excellent movie. But I think most people have seen it already. And so, you know, why not talk about spoilers? Okay, let's talk about spoilers. And so, unfortunately, I don't think I could play this video because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a copyright strike. And so, let's just go ahead and talk about Avengers Infinity War. And I'm going to get into spoilers. And so, if you've not seen Infinity War, I highly recommend that you go watch it first. And then maybe come back to this later. And I also did an Infinity War spoilers as well on my other channel, my Go Movies channel, if you want to go check that out there. But since we have people here, for people who've seen it, we could talk about it. And once again, I'm going to be talking about spoilers, okay? So if you don't want to be spoiled, then don't watch this, okay? And so Black Eye Worm is saying, did we already cover the Sprint and T-Mobile merger? Yes, Black Eye Worm. You could watch the replay. We talked, or I mainly talked about that at the beginning, but it was me and Lance. Yeah, we talked about that. And yeah, so it was at the beginning. So you could always watch a replay. And so let me talk about Infinity War, of the things that I liked and then things that I didn't like so much. Okay, so let me pause this. Hopefully I don't get a copyright strike. Okay, so one of the things that I enjoyed right away about Infinity War, and this gets into spoiler territory, is because they didn't waste a lot of time. So right when you get in, it's pretty much right after the events of Thor Ragnarok, where Thanos and his children are actually on a ship, and they pretty much destroyed all the Asgardians. You know, they even beat down Thor. Thanos is just a beast. And then, if you watch it, as you know, Loki gets killed. He gets his neck snapped. And it's like, whoa. You know, they were pretty serious about this. They started right away. And then from there, you know, we went on to Earth with, you know, Iron Man and Pepper Potts. And so they were having a really special moment there. And then all of a sudden, Thanos' ship shows up. And then that's when we get Spider-Man in, Doctor Strange. And then the Hulk was luckily saved because Thanos was about to kill him. Well, he beat him down. Let's just say that. He beat him down the ship. And I can't remember the guy who the Asgardian, his comic book name, but he actually guards the gate. But it's Idris Elba. He dies as well, but he sends the Hulk to Earth, and that's where we get Doctor Strange in there. And then things just go really fast. You know, I did enjoy that part a lot. That Marvel or the whole movie did not spend too much time explaining things, because for people who are watching Infinity War, the expectation is that you've probably seen the other movies. So you probably understand these characters and you know what's going on. And then it cuts to like galaxy, outside the galaxy, where we have the Guardians of the Galaxy, and how, you know, like Thor, even though he was left for dead and he blew up the ship, Thanos just blew up the ship using one of the Infinity Gems or Infinity Stones, and he survives because Thor is basically a god. He's pretty hard to kill, you know. So his, even with explosions and stuff, his skin is pretty much impenetrable. And so he was quote unquote picked up by the Guardians of the Galaxy, and you know, it's like, it's weird. It's kind of like multiple movies in one. Okay, so that part I enjoyed, but also I didn't enjoy as well. And the parts that I enjoyed was that the Russo brothers did an amazing job in keeping all these characters together in a way that wasn't too crazy. Okay, they still tried to keep things in place, and even when you were moving to Captain America, Black Panther, the Wakandans, and everything together, it kind of all made sense. But at the same time, you felt like you were watching different movies, and because there's so much stuff going on, that was also a negative. And then one thing that I didn't like, and for people who are really into comic books, maybe they could correct me here, but Thanos, even without the Infinity Gauntlet, he is pretty powerful. I mean, if you read the comic books, he's able to withstand blasts from such very powerful characters like the Silver Surfer or even Galactus. And Galactus is super powerful. And then with the Infinity Gauntlet, he's able to go up against other ones like the Beyonder. I don't think against the Tribunal, because the Tribunal is like super duper powerful. And so, yeah, for any of these super characters, human characters, even though they're they're superheroes, for them to even withstand Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet, even without all the gems, that kind of surprised me. And once again, I'm not a super comic book fan, but if you look at his powers, even without the Infinity Gauntlet, he's truly powerful. Okay, so that surprised me. And if you saw the scene in the trailer where, you know, Captain America stops his fist, Thanos should have been able to kill him right away. Even though he beat down everybody else, there really wasn't much of a challenge. I was surprised that happened. And then also on the planet of Titan, when it was the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then it was Spider-Man, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, and they were all almost able to get Thanos' glove off, okay, off of him. And once again, his power level, I kind of thought, even though I know they're superheroes, I don't know, it kind of bothered me. I don't know why it bothered me. And so that part I didn't really like as much. And maybe it wasn't just because of that. It was also because of his children as well. Their power levels, you know, they weren't as high as I thought, because these characters are actually intergalactic destroyer of worlds. And then if you see some of the trailer clips that, you know, like even Black Widow was able to, with Captain America and Falcon, were able to beat down these two children of Thanos who were supposedly world destroyers. And that didn't make sense to me. Like, they let them live. I'm thinking, what? These characters should be way more powerful. And then even Doctor Strange, when he was on the ship and he was being interrogated by one of the children, I can't remember his name, but the way they killed him, they, you know, sent him out into space and he froze. I guess that's about it. I don't know. I don't know. That part I didn't really like. It was kind of anticlimactic in a lot of ways. You know, they really weren't threatening to me. Thanos was definitely threatening. He was menacing, but at the same time, I thought he was way more powerful than that, especially with the Infinity Gauntlet. So Lance is saying they should did the Stan Lee cameo this time as some kind of uber overpowered hero that Thanos flicks with his finger and kills, and then Stan says something funny just before going out. Yeah, that would have been cool. And once again, this is a spoilers, okay? And so Stan Lee, he does make a cameo whenever he's in the school bus with the Spider-Man. Okay, so whenever he saw the actual ship come down, Spider-Man needed his friend, or Peter Parker needed his friend to do a distraction, and then Stan Lee actually took care of that for him. Okay, hey, good morning, Gaza. Thank you so much for joining. And so, as we got into the movie for Infinity War, even though it was a long movie, I think for the most part, it was fun all the way through. For the most part, there were some moments. I would say the Thor moments, whenever he went to go get Stormkiller, for some reason, that just kind of bored me. I don't know why. Even though it had Rocket Raccoon, and it also had a special appearance by Peter Dinklage, I don't know. I didn't really enjoy it as much. And then whenever you went back to Wakanda, they didn't really do much in Wakanda, It was basically, hey, let's meet up. Let's get everybody together. And then let's go ahead and redo Star Wars Episode 1. That's what it looked like. Force field, everybody battling each other. And it wasn't as awesome as what I thought it would be. So that kind of disappointed me. And then also the Hulk. The Hulk never really showed up after the intro when he got beat down by Thor. He kind of showed up, but he didn't. What you see later on is primarily Bruce Banner with the Hulkbuster. And so that's kind of what you see for the rest of it. And once again, wasn't that great, okay? And then by the end of the movie, when we had that final battle on Wakanda, and then whenever Thanos used the Time Stone to actually reverse time, because Vision was actually killed by Scarlet Witch because she destroyed that stone, okay, or gem, or whatever you want to call it. But Thanos just reversed time, took the stone, Vision dies, and then whenever Thanos comes with Stormkillers, he actually hurt Thanos pretty bad. And also it looks like the Infinity Gauntlet as well. But right after he did that, or right before, Thanos already snapped his finger, and that's when we have all these deaths, okay, people just disappearing into ash. And so big characters died. Black Panther dies, Spider-Man dies, Doctor Strange dies, a lot of people die, okay? But at the same time, they're not dead. And if you actually read the comic book, then pretty much everybody comes back. If I remember, I read it a long time ago when I was a kid. And also, we have the special end closing credits with Captain Marvel. And she will have her own movie next year as well. So Captain Marvel is pretty powerful. And so what they're saying is she will be the most powerful Avenger. So I'm not sure if she'll be the most powerful, because Thor and Hulk is pretty powerful. But in order for them to go up against Thanos for the second movie, they're going to have to make her, super powerful. And so if you read the comics, then she was from that race, the Creed, in a lot of ways, because she gets DNA from this guy who is a Creed member. And Creed was, it's a race of aliens. And if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, the main villain, he was from that race. But as I remember, he was powerful, but he wasn't that powerful, right? That's my opinion, because if you remember Guardians of the Galaxy, they ended him off, And so, hopefully, whenever the second one comes around, we'll not only see Captain Marvel, I'm pretty sure we'll see that, but I'm pretty sure we're going to see Adam Warlock as well. And so Adam Warlock is another powerful being, okay? And so he's from outer space as well. And so Adam Warlock, if you read the actual Infinity Gems or Infinity Gauntlet series, the comic books, he plays a really big part in that. And so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. And I'm hoping that on the second one, now that in the Infinity War, you actually are introduced to Thanos officially, and you know who he is. And obviously for anybody who watches Infinity War, they've probably seen the other movies. So hopefully on the next movie, they'll be able to not spend too much time on that and just really get into more of the characters, okay? Because that is probably the part that I think it was very difficult for them to do, having so many characters. But now that you don't need a lot of setup, you already know what's going on, you know what's at stake here. And so my opinion is whenever the second one comes out, they'll be in an alternate world, because if you read comic books, they have multiverses, okay? There's many different realities, and so maybe these comic book characters might be different types of characters in another universe, or they might be dead. They might not even exist. Okay, so that's probably what they're gonna do, and that's probably how they're gonna bring everybody back. You know, or maybe one of the characters will use the Infinity, the Time Stone, because you know the Russo brothers and the writers, they actually do change things. Okay, because if you read the original comic book, Thanos pretty much did all of this because of Death. He was in love with Death, and he wanted to impress her. And so that's why he did all of this, okay? And so with this one, they changed the story up to something else, okay? And so that's my thought on Infinity War. It was an excellent movie. It was fun. However, it wasn't as amazing as I thought it would be. And I don't know if it's because I had such high expectations. I kind of thought it would be maybe as good as the original Avengers, because the original Avengers is my favorite. That's my favorite. And then second to that is a tie between Guardians of the Galaxy and Logan. I enjoyed that very much. It was awesome. And so I would say the Infinity War is right behind that. Now, I have not seen Thor Ragnarok, where I've seen clips of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing. So I'm not sure how that ranks yet. But overall, yeah, just go check it out. Well, if you're watching this right now, then you probably don't need to go check it out because you know all the spoilers. And so that's it for this episode, y'all. So I talked about the T-Mobile Sprint merger and why it's not just about them competing against Verizon, AT&T. I talked about how Linux apps running in Chrome OS is going to be a good thing for the long run, hopefully. And I also spent some time geeking out on both Cobra Kai, which I highly recommend you watch. Check out Cobra Kai if you can. And then also Avengers Infinity War, fun times. And so I first want to thank everybody who's on this live episode today. So thank you, Lance. As always, Lance, been here a long time. Carlos and Rick, I appreciate you so much showing up on these episodes. George, so glad to see you. Haven't seen you in a while here. Blackout Wearing, thanks again, Samuel S., for both of y'all joining these weekly episodes. And of course, Gaza M. And anybody else who's actually watching this show right now, whether it's live or whether it's later on, thank you so much, because your time, our time, is the most valuable asset that we have, and we really thank all of you for being here on our Geek discussion. So if you had any thoughts on this, whether you're, stuff that you agree with, disagree with, or maybe some other thoughts about anything I talked about here, be sure to leave them in the comments area below. And as always, if you did get value out of these episodes, be sure to subscribe. And if you wanted to support my channel further, you could do that at patreon.com/geekoutdoors.